business turnaround resources on this episode of Unlock Your Wealth Today. Your life fully invested. Welcome to Unlock Your Wealth Today. Your life fully invested. I'm your purveyor of prosperity and host, Heather Wagenhals. And on this episode, I'm making success simple by giving your business some turnaround resources. You're wondering, what does she mean by that? Everybody's been hit with COVID-19 problems. I don't care what type of company you are, but especially if you have been in retail, if you have been in hospitality or entertainment, you have watched your business be shuttered by the government and then shaky on the restarts if you've even had the opportunity to restart your business. And you're probably wondering, is there a way to get back to normal? But what if there isn't a normal to return to? What if we have to move forward and play the game with new rules? Well, I have author and business consultant and turnaround expert John Paul Mendocha joining us. And he's a past guest. You probably remember him from last year at Freedom Fest when we talked about his book, Position to Win. Now we're going to talk about some new ideas that he has as a turnaround expert and resources he's helping to provide business owners to help get themselves back on track and be able to prosper after this coronavirus crisis. So help me welcome John Paul Mendocha to the show. John Paul, welcome back to Unlock Your Wealth Today.
Heather, I'm glad to be here. It's really exciting. In fact, I'm so excited that I'm wearing my rose-colored glasses because
I know, you look so groovy. Why the rose-colored glasses? Why would we need those?
well, because the world's filled with opportunities. It's just that most people don't even know how to see them or find them. I mean, I've been waiting 27 years for all these turnarounds to show up, and the world needs a turnaround today.
Well, so what is a turnaround?
Well, a turnaround is where a business is going south. I mean, sales are going down, things aren't going the way they should be. Business is not doing well. But then you get hit with the coronavirus, the COVID, you get shut down, and business is just hanging on by a thread. A turnaround is to take it from going south and take it going north, improve sales, improve your bottom line. A turnaround is absolutely a transformation of a business.
Okay, so then that begs the next question. Since you are a turnaround consultant, what is it that you do?
Well, the first thing that you have to do is you have to go in and do an intervention. I like to spend 2.5 days on site. I can do it remotely and really understand their business because typically in 2.5 days, I get past all of the happy, joy, their idea of wearing rose colored glasses and actually find out what's going on. I can see what their strengths are, their weaknesses, their opportunities, their threats. I'll understand a lot more after 2.5 days and I'll gather all that information. At that point in time, I do no recommendation. What I do is I just gather it all in.
So, as a business owner, how do I know when it's time to call in that turnaround expert? Because if I'm busy wearing rose colored glasses, am I going to know? I mean, what are some of the signs that say I can't do this or I need help?
Well, in the extreme case, I had a client who had his jet repossessed, and he kind of understood that it was time to get somebody in.
Whoops.
Yeah, that was a sad day when they came and took his jet away. He said, "You couldn't believe how sad that was, John." And I said, "Well, I haven't had that happen. When you're falling behind, when sales are going down, when you're not really growing as fast as the market, when you don't have a plan of how to modernize on the digital frontier. I mean, it's interesting all the things that are the little signs. Typically what it is that they're living in denial that things are going south and they're going south and it's 1,000 little cuts every day and they don't see it. That's when they need to call me in just before that. I mean, I can fix them at any point in time, but just before that.
So, what's an example of a couple of the thousand little cuts? I mean, if everybody's getting up and going to work every day, I mean, outside of COVID, but if we're getting up, going to work every day, everybody's showing up, everybody's technically doing their part, what are some of the little cuts that we're not seeing? I mean, is it just overspending? I mean, it can't just be that.
Well, it's failing to understand that the most important thing you can do every day is say, how do we add more customers? How do we get more leads? How do we make sure that every customer that we have, we're getting more business out of them? I mean, there's only three ways to grow a business, and I'll share that with you right now. You get new customers, you get more out of every transaction, so your average sale goes up. Or the third is you get a higher frequency of where those customers come back. Rarely do people even think about going after number three, let alone number two. And because of that, they're always looking for new customers, which are the most expensive to get, and not having customers on a long term basis. You need long term customers.
And that's a funny thing. I mean, I remember from one of my very first sales trainings with Tom Hopkins when I started his Academy of Champions boot camp, and he asked the question of the whole audience, who is your ideal customer? And everybody was raising their hand and coming up with this, that, and the other thing. And he's like, negative. He's like, your best customer is your existing customer. They already like you. And so your cost of customer acquisition goes from whatever it is, 100% sometimes in the beginning, to nothing.
Well, and often today it's a negative. You're going negative to buy customers, and yet I see people doing that all the time. And it's easy to turn around a company if they have customers, and we go back to them. How many people are neglected? How many people never actually have somebody ever come back to them? Now I know why. Somebody's out there is going to say, "Wow, John, we try that." Right. Well, you try it, but the thing is, you have to continuously do it. I mean, if I sent you a single piece of mail, I know I'm going back in the dark ages. What's the likelihood of you saying, "Oh, this person really has a relationship with me"? But if I do it on a consistent basis, if I keep working to get your business and earn your business, it's going to work. Digitally, it's even harder. Now, we have to give them a reason to want to come back and talk to us again. So most people just ignore customers and let them move on. All I can tell you is that if you go and look to the Northwest and you look at Amazon, I don't think there's a day. I mean, I don't even think there's 5 hours that goes by that Amazon doesn't say, "Hi, John, how are you doing?" Now, many people just say, "Well, that doesn't really work." It must. Jeff Bezos is the richest man on the planet right now, and it
Yeah.
works. And it works because they're talking about what I wanted anyway.
Right. I mean, it's amazing how these digital marketers know us better than we know ourselves sometimes. They're anticipating what we're going to buy next, and they start marketing themselves to us. It's crazy how that works. I just went and I bought something on Amazon, and sure enough, they were right there with the upsell before I closed out of my shopping cart. And I'm like, oh yeah, I totally didn't know I needed it, but I needed it. So I had to get that too.
And that's true. And the seduction part of it, for those of you who say, "Well, I want to go and do something similar to that," is just think of it this way. If you're going to go back to your customers, how many different ways can we touch them? How many different ways can we engage with them? And more importantly, what else can we sell them? Now, it's not just the sales side of it that you have to worry about. It's the margins, it's how you do the business, it's how you set up the business. The concept of doing a turnaround, it is the totality of the business has to be fixed. And there are some fundamental things that people don't do every day that they just don't understand it. Just a real quick example. If you're a contractor, as an example, and you show up 5 minutes late to fix something, well, okay, traffic, whatever. But that 5 minutes late compounds that by the end of the day, you're like a half an hour late. What happens to your reviews? What happens to how they think about you? What happens to your competency? You know, Airplanes are late all the time. I know, Heather, you've flown a lot. Used to fly
I
before
know.
this all the time. And can you sit there and say, "Well, yeah, the problem started at 6 a.m. and it's just compounded itself. And now you're at 9 o'clock at night trying to get home and you're 2.5 hours late." Now, all I can tell you is that if you don't give slack to the airlines, why should they give you slack when you show up to their location and go to fix them. Big mistakes caused by little problems.
Right. Because little problems, like you said, escalate.
Thousand cuts, thousand cuts. You want to go back and see how irritated people are, show up late. I was working with some roofing contractors, and unfortunately I just couldn't figure out how to connect with them. And I said, it comes down to two simple things: show up on time and put on a clean shirt. Now, I'm not even asking you to put on something that smells nice, but put on a clean shirt. And most of them hated that idea. Everybody who did it, those who did that, all of them improved their business. All of them increased their business. Why? Because when they showed up, the homeowner, usually a woman, would see that. And if a guy walks in and it looks like, geez, I wouldn't want this guy to even touch my house, let alone do something with it. But when they showed up and they looked better and they were on time, business went up significantly.
Right. And then they get the add on sales because they're pleasant, personable, and they look neat and professional. And as we were talking before the program and we were talking about body language, first impressions last.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And so part of turning around a business is turning around the culture and changing some things, that there should be no sacred cows. And this means that even though good old Ted is somebody that, and I've had this situation where people have hired me to fire good old Ted because, well, I was in Ted's second wedding, so I feel uncomfortable firing Ted, but Ted had to go.
Yeah, he's my sister's brother in law's best friend. And
Yep.
he's had a few bumps in the road. We just need to help him out. I get that. I get
Right.
that.
Well, and I hear all the time where people say, I just was talking to a client before you and I connected today, as I was talking to a coaching client. He says, well, but my people don't want to follow these directions. Well, are they really your people?
Yeah. Because your
Somebody has to
people
be a
would be
leader.
following those directions. It makes me think of Colin's book, Good to Great, getting the right people on the bus and getting the wrong people off the bus.
Correct. Yeah. Now, and in a turnaround situation, we're driving it by urgency, because in a turnaround, we're accepting the fact that we don't have time, and we don't have money, and we don't have resources. That's what makes turnaround so interesting, and why today so many businesses are going to go through this shock phase, because they're going to find out that they don't have the time that they used to have. They don't have the money, because they'll go back to the bank and say, oh, by the way, we had that $250,000 line of credit. And the bank goes, we really want to watch how much we're going to lend you, because your financials look a little weaker. You don't have the resources. Maybe somebody you were counting on went out of business. Well, in a turnaround, that's just standard common practice.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to learn how to deal with that. And one of the things that I do is know how to deal with those kind of crises. And that it doesn't say, when this happens to a normal person in business, it's the end of the world. For me, it's just Thursday.
So what does a successful turnaround look like? So someone hires you and you go in. What does a turnaround look like? How do we know that it's been successful? I mean, obviously the money comes back, but what are some of the other markers that show a successful turnaround?
Well, in 3 steps, it comes down to, the first thing we do is we consolidate and build a base, and we get rid of all of those things that aren't working anymore. There's this thing called the sunk cost fallacy. If something isn't working, it goes. We just chop it out mercilessly, and we just remove it.
But I spent so much on that.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And what I do is I have them go back and I have them watch a video from when the U.S. Navy pushed perfectly good helicopters into the South China Sea in 1975, because you know what? We didn't have enough room. We got to make room. Helicopter goes off the side of the ship. Sorry, that's what happened. So first thing is we build a base. The second thing that we do in the second step is that we now are positioned to growth, because we're lighter, we're leaner, we're better than we were before, and we go through a growth phase. And the third step is, how do we get to some level of liquidity, refinance everything, sell out to somebody, either, maybe we even acquire somebody, but how do we get to that? So it's really those 3 steps. So that's how we know where it's going to be at. Anybody who has been believing in organic growth usually is not a business that's really set up to grow very fast and very far.
That's curious. Well, one of the things that's really exciting is what you are doing now, because not only are you a turnaround consultant, but you've created this turnaround engine network. And I would like to talk with you more about that after the break. So, you are watching John Paul Mendocha on Unlock Your Wealth Today. We'll be right back with more right after this. No time to read the best selling books for your business or industry? What if I told you you could enjoy the best and most meaningful parts of a book in about 12 minutes? Believe me, I'm Heather Wagenhals, and I'm making success simple by helping you learn on the go just like I do, with text, audio, and video summaries from your favorite best-selling books, and do it on the fly in less than 12 minutes with Steve Cunningham and Read It For Me. Join tens of thousands of leaders around the world, including yours truly, who use Read It For Me to learn the biggest ideas from the world's best leadership, sales, marketing, and personal development books in less than 12 minutes. All you have to do to begin reading best-selling books and enjoying your special rate for Unlock Your Wealth fans is visit unlockyourwealth.com/read it for me, or click on the link somewhere in this post. Learn on the go with text, audio, and video summaries from your favorite best-selling books, and do it on the fly in less than 12 minutes. Visit unlockyourwealth.com/read it for me and start your 12-minute reading journey now. Welcome back to Unlock Your Wealth Today, your life fully invested. I'm your purveyor of prosperity and host, Heather Wagenhals. And before the break, I was chatting with turnaround business expert John Paul Mendocha, and we were talking about specifically what companies are eligible or are in need of a turnaround and what a successful turnaround looks like. This part of the show, we're going to talk about what resources he has available to businesses that are looking for a turnaround, or if you know someone who is in need of a turnaround. Now, John, it's time to pull off those rose-colored glasses, because we're going to talk about your turnaround engine network. And let's talk about what is the turnaround engine network, because we talked about what turnarounds are and what to spot when we need one, what one looks like once we've completed it. Now let's talk about finding them to begin with. So what is the turnaround engine network? Let's start there.
So Turnaround Engine Network is something that I created with my partner, Gabe Batista. And the reason for it is that you have 32.5 million businesses in the US. And I think with the exception of 5 businesses, everybody is going to need some level of restructuring and a turnaround. And in fact, all the restructuring consulting companies are out hiring people like crazy right now. So people are needing to have this work done. Now, the downside of it is that how do you go out and find these opportunities? Where does this take place? Because there's no Amazon, there's no eBay, there's no Zillow that says, oh, hey, stick in the parameters and businesses pop up. There's nobody who needs a turnaround that has a big sign that says, hey, buy from us. We're on death's door.
Yeah. Fix me, please.
Exactly.
You got the CEO sitting out front with a cardboard sign. Fix my company, please.
Have one of those, have one of those air things where the hands go up and down. We need a turnaround.
We need a inflatable guy.
So Turnaround Engine Network really is designed to do build a network and designed to bring in various talent to get people into the turnaround space. And the first thing is how to go out and find turnarounds, and then how to bring them together. See, most people discover these things via a fluke. They stumble into something. And the mistake of that is that therefore you don't know if you're going to pick a good one or a bad one. Also, you have no criteria by which you can then evaluate how sick a business is. I mean, imagine if you went to a doctor 150 years ago and you said, oh, I need you to do an ultrasound. Well, they go, what are you talking? What's an ultrasound? What's wrong with you?
He's like, we don't do that hocus pocus here.
Exactly, exactly. Hey, go somebody go get me my favorite leeches. I'm good, you know. And of course, whenever I say that, I always think, oh, my brother-in-law is showing up. Okay.
Ah!
Oh, so what we do is we really are teaching people how to go to become hunters and building a common language as to finding these opportunities. But if that's all I did was find the opportunities, it really isn't a network, because what we have to add in there are the consultants and resources to go out and actually affect the turnaround. And then the final piece is to find investors, those who have the means, those who are accredited, to be able to say, you know what, this looks like a real opportunity. Now, I'm always amazed when people say, John, how is it that because you are working with us, I'm talking about my clients, we were able to get the funding that we needed, even though we had hired the accounting people to help us do that? And I said, well, because I work in, as a team approach, and I'm showing that sales are going to go up. Who wants to lend money to a sinking ship? Who wants to lend money to something that isn't going in the right direction?
Right.
And that's where you build a network and you have all of those elements in the same space and the same time.
Well, and you know what I think about as I'm listening to you share your three-pronged approach, that's actually a really great idea to already have curated investors. And the reason why I say that as a pinch lender is what I like to refer to myself as. You need money in a pinch, I'm your girl, right?
Yep.
And so you have to have people with intestinal fortitude when it comes to that type of lending. If you know you're lending to a sinking ship, you have to have some sort of ability to manage risk or be willing to hope for the reward based on the commensurate level of risk. And if I'm looking at investing in a sinking ship and say, I know that you or one of your curated consultants is doing the turnaround, now I know that that gives this table, this wobbly table, an extra leg of support. So now, as an investor, I can be more confident knowing that there's an organization and a connection made, and then there's somebody that's actually working to make things different. Because, what do they always say about, investing in mutual funds? They say past performance does not necessarily indicate future results, but it's a good way to judge. Because why? You know this with your Vegas days, because behavior is static. People always do what they've always done. And if I'm looking to invest in you, and you've always done what got you where you are, that's not giving me confidence to say yes. But if you bring somebody in, now it's a different underwriting decision. And so that makes it almost easier for these businesses to do the turnaround, to get the money that they need, by being able to have that other layer of underwriting confidence, if you will. Am I right?
You're absolutely right. And to that I would point out that when you take the experience that I have had, plus all the experience of the teams that I have already assembled, and you add it to now new people joining the network and training them on how to go find opportunities, when an investor comes in, we can then present and say, this is the criteria under which we're going out and effectuating the turnaround. Most of the time when somebody says, I just need a few bucks and I think I can make it through. I'm sure you've heard that from lots of people in your life. And you go, okay, all right, a few bucks and they'll make it through. But then you discover that they don't follow through and they didn't take care of this problem and they didn't take care of that problem, or they ran into a rock in the road, or an old creditor popped up and showed up. All of those things are things that I already anticipate. you know, I will often not even get started in the turnaround until they engage with me. And I say, look, I've got to go talk to all of your creditors and tell them how bad things are. I literally had a guy who said, oh, I have been hiding this from these three. I've been hiding these from these three vendors, and I've been hiding it from these people. Hiding these. Well, you know what? They're going to find out, and
Yeah.
when the market finds out that you're in death's door, trust me, they're going to stop buying from you. So we have to make sure that we round everybody up, get everybody in the same page and show them that, you know what, if you don't do something now, if you don't make some concessions, if you don't let us work through this, in all likelihood, unless you're a Bob Dylan fan, these guys are knocking on heaven's door, and it
Hmm.
could be bad news for you. And it's always interesting because they will give me a concession. I'm talking about a vendor that they would never have given to the original team. And they do it because they say, look, your non-emotional hands are a steady hand on the tiller. And
Hmm.
that changes everything. And then I can go back and find the pinch lenders and the other people and say, look, here's what we need, and here's why we need it, and here's what we're going to do.
Hmm. Well, it makes a tremendous amount of sense, and I'm surprised that no one else has already thought of this idea. But it's perfect for what you do, because then you'll have your own army of people going out and hunting, as you said, to find these deals. So you can then pick and choose which ones you think that you'll be able to have the most ability to effectuate change.
Right. And the other part of it is that I know that there are people out there who will teach you some of the basics and then you're on your own. The issue is that once you get one of these, how are you going to deal with the stress and the pain and all of that that comes along with doing a turnaround?
Right.
And I have had a lot of people, and I like to just say it this way: everybody loves the war stories, they just don't want to be in the war. Now, if that's the case, then you shouldn't be on the turnaround team. You should be part of the hunters. You should go find the opportunities
Hmm.
because it's going to be some slogging and some battles and some things going on. Now, over the years, it's become faster for me to evaluate, fix, and move them along. But because I have a process that I have been documenting and working through and understand the variables that exist, it changes things dramatically. So now when somebody says, okay, I'd like to get into this, instead of them having to go through this massive amount of material, what I do is I teach them how to go out and profile and evaluate who these people are. And in fact, even if you never do a turnaround, even if you never find anything that's a turnaround, if you learn how to really profile businesses, and I have to say, like 95% of most salespeople, even the best salespeople, suck at really profiling a business
Hmm.
because they don't really like to do that kind of work. But if you learn how to do that, you will have head and shoulders advantages over every single competitor you're ever going to come up against.
So the turnaround engine offers hunter training, right? Because that's
Yes,
probably the first place to get started, right?
right. Well,
Okay,
exactly.
so let's say I'm like, I'm a business person. Maybe I just sold my company. I'm kind of looking for something to do. This hunter thing sounds like it's not a whole lot of work, but it's something to give me purpose with my day. How does somebody get started to become part of the turnaround engine network?
So how we have built it is obviously we have a digital platform that's going to host the training. And what we do is if you go to turnaroundengine.com, you can find out about signing up. But what we do is you come in and we have two trainings a month, and then we have one session, a workshop where we talk about deals. So there's a lot of interaction. You're going to see a lot of material, but what it is that I'm giving you a proven method by which you're going to be able to profile businesses and know more about those businesses than they usually know about it themselves. And that's pretty astonishing as an outsider. The second thing that happens is that let's say you are that person who just sold a business and you want to think about it. If you're ever even thinking about investing in a private company, you'll want to know how to do the profiling because when we do the profiling, we also look at their competitive landscape. I am astonished at how many businesses that I'll walk into. Doesn't matter, high tech, low tech, no tech, any tech, and they don't know who their competitors are. When I
Or they
was,
think they don't have any. Oh, I'm
oh,
the only one in my field, and I'm all, mm-hmm.
well, wait
Yep.
a second, I got to get my rose colored glasses back for this kind
Yeah,
of talk.
I know, really.
But they won't know who their competitors are. And I'll sit there and I'll say, well, okay, why don't you know who these people are? Well, because they really have been so focused on their problems, or everything they think about their competitors is that they hate their competitors. Their competitors suck. They're nowhere near as good as we are. Well, but they're still out there.
Yeah, and they're making money, so it doesn't matter how good you are if you're not helping people.
Exactly. So one of the biggest things that I think comes out of this is that if you're a person who wants to know how businesses can look and how to put them together, this is a great training method for doing that. And if you're an investor, it's a good way to know if you're buying something that's really a good idea or not.
Because you have somebody kind of doing the underwriting for you already.
Well, and learning what the steps are and learning what the pieces are. So therefore you can go in and demand some of these things. We see this all the time when somebody says, "Oh, what do you cover?" I cover it all. I want to know how they're shipping. I want to know how they're delivering. I want to know how they're handling customer service. I want to know how they're selling, manufacturing, where they're doing all of these things. I want to know their entire business. I want them to describe their business in great detail. Now, if they can't, I don't just say, oh, well, go back to the back of the line, because that might be an opportunity for an acquisition from our side. Maybe we want to acquire them and then fix them and then resell them down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Any or all or just some part of a business. But for the most part, what we do is we're doing this in depth understanding. So, what someone gets by joining the network is they get access to all of this information. Plus, they get to see what live deals look like. If you don't know how to look at a deal, it is very easy to fall in love with a deal. There is a lot of deal seduction that goes on, and I don't know if this is true of your audience, but there's a lot of deal seduction. And years ago, I was very interested in I'm still interested in cars, but really interested in looking at buying an exotic car. And this guy, who's a very famous guy, I'll leave his name out, but he said, John, be wary of the 50 footers. And I said, what? And he goes, yep, if you're standing 50 feet away and that car looks really good and you start falling in love with it, pull yourself back a little bit and then walk up with a microscope and figure out what's going on. Because
Mm.
from 50 feet, everything looks good. Well, I've seen people invest in some of the craziest businesses, and that's actually where I've gotten a lot of my deals over the years, is that investors who are up to their neck and saying, I can't lose my trust fund money, or I can't lose my retirement dough. And they bring me in and they say, what can you do with this thing? And usually there's a lot we can do, but astonishingly, they gave somebody several $100,000 without ever even doing. Now, they hired somebody to do due diligence.
I've watched people give away seven figures on trust and confidence and that whole romance at 50 feet away.
Yeah.
And it blows me away. I mean, I was really fortunate when I was young to have worked for a venture capitalist that put me on a due diligence team. And my job was to go in and break the deal, find every reason not to do something.
Right. Now, in my case, so that's what the VCs do. In my case, what I have to do is I have to do that work that you're talking about, but I have to say to myself, all right, you're so smart, or your team is so smart, or this method is so smart, save the deal. You know it's broken. Now save it. How do you put
Right.
it together and save it? Now, oftentimes that can be a very painful process. On the other side, the rewards are very high.
Right. And it's that risk reward ratio. And it's just simply a measure of your intestinal fortitude. And that comes with experience.
It does, and it also comes with knowing that you have to be decisive, and most of us are not decisive. We are struggling. I'll share this with your listeners. If you ever hire anybody of significance, that's going to be really important in your life, is you have to go to 2 meals with them. It's my John Mendocha 2 meal rule. Okay,
Okay.
and that is because very few people, unless they're sociopaths, but very few people can actually hide from you over 2 meals.
I
And what you
like
want
that.
to do is you want to see how they order and how they do this. I once, because I was doing a turnaround, I fire everybody, and then I go out and hire new teams. I once didn't hire a guy, and he kept calling me back, going, "Why didn't you hire me?" I said, "Because you couldn't order breakfast." And to this day, if I run into him in an airport, he'll just walk up and wag his finger at me because he's so disgusted. But he couldn't order breakfast. And if somebody's not decisive in that position, now that would have been great if he was going to be a guy who was a ponderer. I just didn't have ponderer in the list of people I needed. I needed somebody who could order
Not part
damn
of the job
breakfast.
description.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well, this has been a tremendous conversation, and it's really proximal to what's going on in the world today. With the COVID thing, I have watched so many of my friends being capped off at the knees because they're in entertainment or hospitality or the restaurant business. And so I've watched several of my close friends really, really hurt. And the turnaround engine network is ideal for folks that have to figure out, okay, I can't play the game by yesterday's rules. We've got new rules. I got to figure out a new way to play this game, and I don't know how to do that. And being able to admit that is probably the first step to salvation. And if folks are looking for an opportunity to participate in the Turnaround Engine Network, where do they go and find you?
They go to turnaroundengine.com and go there. You can find out information. Also, if you sign up, for the free stuff, is that you can then come on a webinar and you can hear how I describe in greater detail what the opportunity is, what's going to take place. Think of it this way: globally, every business is going to be altered and changed from this day forward. More businesses will go out of business this year than have gone out of business in probably the last 10 years, even though we had a great recession and all of that. And the reason for that is that they will not know how to deal with this new environment. They are waiting for the normal or normalcy to come back, and it won't happen. The other part is that intellectual property, which really does have value, is that tens of millions of dollars of that a month is dropping on the ground. And I'm talking about dropping on the ground. Hundreds of millions, and it'll end up being billions of dollars worth of intellectual property will go a cropper. And the reason for that is lenders aren't going to pick it up because they don't even know what to do with it. Hey, let's get this piece of intellectual property. But if you don't know where you're going to sell it, what are you going to do with it? We're out looking for that every day in the Turnaround Engine Network. So we believe that this is the best time, frankly, in my entire career doing turnarounds, to go out and do them, because the barriers from the business side, the mental barriers that stop people from seeking help, are being dramatically reduced and their minds are opened up. So if they go to turnaroundengine.com, love to have them think about joining the network. There's going to be a lot of benefits to it. The biggest one that I think is that you get to see how deals actually get done and how to go out and profile and make sure that you're buying something that's worth buying.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of today's show and sharing everything that you have. And for those of you without a pencil, never fear, unlockyourwealthtoday.com is here, where you can visit John Paul's show page, get the links to all of his great resources, and so much more. For the maestro of moolah, Michael Terry, I'm Heather Wagenhals. Now go out and unlock your wealth today.
UnlockYourWealthToday.com is produced by Heather Wagenhals and the Unlock Your Wealth Foundation. UnlockYourWealthToday.com and its affiliates are copyrighted 2018 with all rights reserved. For more information on the Keys to Riches Financial Wellness Series, please visit our website at www.unlockyourwealthtoday.com.